Hello friends, followers and channel members, welcome to another video here in Microsoft Flight Simulator, and today in this video we are going to be taking a look at the optimization levels of the Fenix A320, the FlyByWire A320 and the PMDG 737. Since the Fenix has been released, lots of people have been trying to compare all three aircraft to see which one actually does deliver better optimization overall and frame rates. In this video I'm going to show you all three aircraft all in exactly the same set of scenarios so you can see for yourself which one seems to be working better on my system at least. My system specs are placed down in the video description below so you can check those out for yourself, but I'd be really interested to hear what you guys are getting FPS wise on these three aircraft. Bear in mind that my PC of course is really just a mid-spec PC running a GTX 1660. Now for these experiments of course we're going to compare everything like for like exactly the same. First up we are at Paris Orly Airport, and this is a default airport on my system. We've cleared out all of the weather so that the only thing in the simulator is my aircraft. There's no AI aircraft, no VATSIM traffic, no clouds, weather, etc. to speak of. So on the ground here you can see the Fenix aircraft first up is holding steady at around 42 FPS. Jumping into the flight deck then, we can see a cold and dark state. We have around mid-30s, and of course as you're panning around that kind of drops a little bit, but once the camera settles it comes up again and actually is holding quite nicely in this view here, around 46, 47 FPS. Obviously inside the flight deck it doesn't have all the external terrain to try and render, so it works alright, but what happens when we actually fire up the aircraft? Well, as you can see, a little bit of power has taken quite a chunk off the FPS as this has dropped down now to around 37, 38, and some of the systems here still booting up at this point. It is a highly detailed aircraft, so I suppose you can understand why some of the performance is lagging a little bit because of everything now that's going on under the bonnet, so to speak. But yeah, as you can see there, dropping down sort of the mid-30s, particularly when panning around as well. What I tended to find was that in total, just turning the systems on in the Fenix A320 could drop your performance by about 10 frames per second. So let's have a look now and compare the fly-by-wire. So exactly the same scenario, this time still at Orly, all clouds cleared, and we can see sat on the ground then the fly-by-wire giving us an FPS of around 46, 47. That is a good 4 or 5 FPS better than the Fenix aircraft. Jumping inside to the flight deck then, still cold and dark at this stage, we can see that we've got FPS of just touching 45, 46, occasionally just jumping a little bit higher. Once again, panning around, it drops the FPS a little bit lower, but overall this was actually pretty similar to the Fenix aircraft. Maybe 1 or 2 frames more, but really nothing that made a tremendous difference between the two. Let's however power up the fly-by-wire and then see where we're at. So with power in the aircraft, once everything had fired up correctly and settled down, we can see that we've got about 45, occasionally 46 FPS here. That is a good 10 frames per second better than the Fenix, and to be fair, at times it jumped up even higher. So what about the PMDG Boeing 737? Well, rumour has it that the 737 is perhaps the better optimised of the three. As we're looking here though, we can see we're holding a nice 44 FPS, which is a couple frames more than the Fenix, but not as good as the fly-by-wire. And even when we get inside the 737, we can see that its FPS is actually really rather similar of the fly-by-wire and the Fenix, so no real differences just here. What about though when we actually turn the 737 on? This then is where, like the fly-by-wire, it trumps the Fenix. It holds around 44, 45, occasionally drops a little bit while some internal workings are going on, but that always seems to come back up. So the fly-by-wire and the 737 are very similar inside the aircraft. Only the Fenix has a massive drop once powered on. So these were some nice conditions to test the three aircraft on, but what happens when we throw these aircraft into some really high defined scenery airports that it has to work with? So enter Aerosoft's Brussels airport. widely accepted amongst the community at the time this video has been filmed as probably the best airport scenery that we have for Microsoft Flight Simulator. The Fenix again then sat here at the gate with clear skies is just struggling to hold around 30 FPS. Jumping inside, and as expected it holds around the same, perhaps a little bit better, as it hasn't got all the scenery outside on screen to try and render. The real test then here for the Fenix is going to be what happens when we actually power the aircraft on. Now I must admit, once I did this, I was actually a little bit shocked because I expected a worse performance, but here we go, once again, the Fenix holding its own, just keeping around that 30 FPS. The degradation here didn't seem as bad as it did in the default airport at Paris. If I can hold 30 FPS here in Brussels with the Fenix, then I'll be very happy. Time to check out the fly-by-wire in the same scenario then, and as you can see this had absolutely no problems holding steady above 30 FPS, in fact sometimes pushing as high as 35, 36 just for a moment. But yet once again, as expected now, the fly-by-wire proving to be a little better in these higher demanding scenarios. And once I got inside, it was even better news, holding around 36, 35 FPS here in Brussels. Let's turn the fly-by-wire on and see how that holds up. And again, as we can see, there's hardly any impact, maybe a frame or two. So now it was time to bring the PMDG 737 here into Brussels and look at this. Exactly the same scenario, and this is holding now around 40 FPS. That's 10 more than the Fenix, 8 more than the fly-by-wire. So perhaps the rumours of the 737 being far better optimised than the two Airbuses are indeed true. Let's have a look what happens when we drop inside the cockpit. And as we can see, when panning around the flight deck, we get the usual degradation that you would expect, but actually whenever the camera was held steady, it was still getting into the high 30s, losing just 3, maybe 4 frames compared to the outside view. Let's go ahead and power our 737 up and see if that has any dramatic effect. Well, maybe 1 or 2 frames, but nothing really to write home about, so it's fair to say that the 737, both inside and outside, hold its level pretty well compared to the two Airbus aircraft. But of course, most of our time is spent in flight, so how well does the Fenix, the fly-by-wire and the PMDG 737 perform when we're flying at around 15,000 feet? First up then is our Fenix aircraft, and as you can see it's holding around the mid-30s, and again, to make it fair, we've removed any traffic and we've got no clouds of course in the simulator. This is just clear weather. So the Fenix holding around 35. Let's bring in the fly-by-wire. And what a difference, have a look at that. So we've got the fly-by-wire now flying in more or less exactly the same part of the sky as I tested the Fenix, and we've got an FPS of 51.52. That is around 15 FPS more than the Fenix. Let's check out the Boeing. And again, as we can see, a good 10 to 12 more FPS than the Fenix, almost pushing to the sort of levels that we were seeing from the fly-by-wire. So after all of that, I'm going to leave you guys to draw your own conclusions. Yes, the Fenix probably is the worst performing of the three, but it's probably also the most advanced in terms of all of its systems. I'd love to know down in the comments below what you guys think between the fly-by-wire, the Fenix, and of course the PMDG 737. How much does the performance impact between the three on your systems? I only have a mid-spec system, which is the GTX 1660 and a Ryzen 5 3600. Please do let me know down in the comments below what you think of these findings in this video here today. Thanks so much for watching. If you have enjoyed it, please do hit that like button, and of course if you are new to the channel, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications bell so you don't miss any more videos or live streams. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all again very soon. Bye bye for now.